Welcome to the Roundtable, Arirang TV's program to examine with experts current global affairs. We have two experts with us in the studio today. We have Professor Hwang Tae-hee, Professor of Politics and International Studies at Yonsei University. Welcome to the program, Professor Hwang.
Thanks for having me.
We also have Professor Kim Hana, Professor at Seogang University Graduate School of International Studies. Welcome back, Professor
Thanks
Kim.
for having me again.
The first case we are going to examine is the conflict between Hamas and Israel in the Gaza Strip. On the surface, it looks like a contest between David and Goliath. Comparing the military balance between Israel and Hamas, Israel has definitely upper hand. The combined number of Israel's active duty and reserve forces amounts to 630,000. Hamas is presumed to have as many as 20,000 soldiers. Israel also possesses 600 fighter jets and 2,200 tanks, while Hamas has Iranian multiple rockets and up to 10,000 missiles. Professor Kim, in the worst case scenario, people are concerned that the conflict between Israel and Hamas will be internationalized, involving neighboring countries such as Iraq, Iran, Yemen, and Hezbollah. How do you assess the possibility of the internationalization of the conflict?
So it's definitely possible that the conflict will escalate, especially seeing what's been happening over the past few days. But it really does depend on how Israel proceeds. If Israel does send ground troops into the Gaza Strip and potentially hurt civilians, we can imagine that external actors such as Hezbollah do get involved. And Hezbollah is a lot stronger than Hamas, so Israel would be dealing with a two-front war. That would be very difficult for Israel. Of course, the international community, including both China and the US, are working to de-escalate the situation. But we definitely see that it really does depend on how Israel acts within the next few days.
Professor Hwang, the most shocking news coming out of the early days of the conflict must be the failure of the Iron Dome to protect civilians of Israel, right? What explains the failure of the Iron Dome to block the rocket launches from Hamas?
So we can think about several reasons that Iron Dome failed. So the first was scale. It was such a large-scale attack by Hamas. So Hamas fired approximately 4,400 rockets at Israel, and this far exceeds the maximum capacity of interception system of Israel, of the Iron Dome, which was 800 rockets. The second was technology. So this time, Hamas used a more intelligent method besides the traditional rocket launching. For example, Hamas utilized drones to destroy the surveillance equipment of Iron Dome. Also, Hamas used various types of methods to disrupt anti-aircraft network of Israel.
Okay, I see.
이번 중동 사태는 우크라이나 전쟁에 더해 에너지 안보, 공급망 문제 등 국제사회가 처해 있는 위기에 대한 취약성이 악화될 가능성이 있습니다. 선제적으로 리스크 관리를 하지 않아서 골든타임을 놓칠 경우 그 피해는 고스란히 국민들의 몫이 될 수 있음을 명심해야 합니다. 오늘 모든 관계 부처는 논의되는 사안을 토대로 경제와 안보 측면에서 우리 국민이 조금이라도 피해를 보거나 위험에 빠지는 일이 발생하지 않도록 철저하게 대비해 주기 바랍니다. 이스라엘 하마스 사태가 우리에게 주는 경제, 안보적 함의를 면밀히 검토하고 분석해서 지속적으로 보고해 주기 바랍니다.
Professor Kim, although North Korea is far away from the conflict in between Hamas and Israel, North Koreans must be paying very serious attention to what's going on there. What kind of lessons are being drawn by North Korean leadership?
So North Korea is definitely watching the situation in the Middle East right now. It's most likely going to be watching the effectiveness of the Iron Dome, especially since South Korea has been considering importing and developing one of its own due to North Korea's long-range artillery. But we can also imagine that North Korea is watching the situation in Israel closely because of Israel's intelligence failure. So Israel was completely unprepared for this attack. And it was attacked on multiple fronts. So North Korea may be watching to see whether this strategy is effective. Another thing that North Korea may be watching is the domestic situation. Part of the reason why Hamas attacked at this very moment was because Israel was dealing with domestic disunity and domestic polarization. And similarly, North Korea may be watching the situation in South Korea to see whether or not there is any type of domestic polarization or disunity. That would be a good moment for an external threat to attack. And I think the last point is watching the response from the international community. North Korea has to consider sanctions. So it's going to be looking and watching to see whether or not other countries get involved in the attack as well.
Yeah, it is no coincidence that South Korea is going to hold a National Assembly election in coming April next year.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Professor Hwang, you explained why the Iron Dome system of Israel failed. And it is known that the attack capability of North Korean military is far greater than that of Hamas. So, does South Korea has adequate and reliable missile defense system against North Korea attack with short-range missile, long-range missiles, rockets, and artillery?
Well, I think that's an important question. And if North Korea attacks South Korea using all these numerous missiles at once, and I'm not sure if current interception system of South Korea launched in the Korean Peninsula can handle all of them effectively. So first, North Korea can fire theoretically 16,000 rockets per hour, at least at the early stage of the war. And also, North Korea has many different types of rockets, like multiple rocket launchers and ballistic rockets and guided rockets and all of them. If all of them are used at once, I think it would be really challenging for South Korea to respond to them effectively.
But the South Korean military is currently developing its own low-altitude missile defense system dubbed as LAMD. It's a Korean style of Iron Dome, and according to the South Korean government, it is scheduled to be completed by 2029. But President Yoon Suk-yeol, probably in the aftermath of the conflict between Hamas and Israel in Gaza Strip, urged the completion of this program to be made by 2026. From development to deployment, where is South Korea now in the process?
So our military is developing a system to intercept these North Korea's multiple rocket launchers, which is called LAMD, Low Altitude Missile Defense. So the goal is to finish developing by 2026 and start using it in real situations in 2027. However, North Korea has these multiple rocket launchers that are very powerful and have a better accuracy and better range and so on. So it's not certain that LAMD as a current status can effectively respond to these North Korea's potential attack. So what should we do? Well, I think South Korea should invest more for LAMD to first have a better radar system for detection, and second, to have a better accuracy, speed, and range. Also, I think South Korea should consider, I think already doing it, but consider multiple interception system from low altitude and high altitude and so on.
I see. Professor Kim, anything to add about making South Korea's defense system more reliable?
Well, so it's undeniable that North Korea is stronger than Hamas, and as a result of that, there is a point of concern for the Korean Peninsula. But Korea's military is stronger than Israel, and Korea is spending 2 times the amount in its military spending compared to that of Israel. So at this point in time, I wouldn't be too concerned about the situation.
I see. There are increasing concern that because of the prolonged war in Ukraine and the new military conflict in the Gaza Strip, the United States will not be able to pay due attention to North Korea developing nuclear weapons and missiles, and the weakening of the security commitment of the Biden administration to South Korea and Japan as its Asian allies. How do you assess the impact of the situation in the Middle East on the Korean Peninsula security environment? Professor Kim, you go first.
So it's undeniable that some of the resources are going to be depleted at this time, but the U.S. has also committed to providing support to South Korea, and the National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby recently mentioned that the Israel-Hamas conflict will not prevent the U.S. from committing to South Korea and maintaining its commitment. So in that sense, I don't think that we have too much to worry about, despite the fact that some of the resources are going to be depleted.
Mr. Fang?
I think we have to be worried about current situation. So I think the Ukrainian war and Middle East conflict will definitely affect security environment in the Korean Peninsula. So United States is playing a world police role right now, and we're using limited resources. So therefore, because of these two big conflicts, I think United States will decrease focus on the Korean Peninsula, which will increase a potential probability that North Korea will provoke. So overall, I think tension in Korean Peninsula will increase. So what should we do? I think we should definitely strengthen our own military capability. So we talked about LAMD and other equipment and other systems. Also, we have to strengthen ROK-US alliance. So one way to do it is to institutionalize a nuclear consultation group that was created as a result of Washington Declaration in April this year. Also, we have to get more international cooperation from other countries to keep this peace in the Korean Peninsula.
I see. Our next topic is Russian President Vladimir Putin, who turned 71 October 7th. It was his 20th birthday. He celebrated as president. According to a recent pollster survey by Russian pollster Vizum, 77% of Russian population show confidence and support in him. He has been in his office for 24 years now. Despite the war in Ukraine dragged on, his popularity remains very high.
Вот начали боевые действия активные, контрнаступление так называемое. Вот оно с 4 июня продолжается, пока результатов нет, есть только огромные потери. Потери просто огромные. 1 к 8.
Professor Kim, what accounts for high popularity of Vladimir Putin as president?
So there are many reasons why Putin is really popular in Russia. Part of it is due to the fact that during times of crises, there tends to be increasing support for the incumbent leader, which is often called the rally around the flag effect. And because of that, because of international support for Ukraine as well as Western sanctions, we can see a lot of Russian civilians increasing their support for Putin at this time. But also there's different perspectives of the Ukraine war in Russia, where some Russian civilians believe that there's a bit of validation as to why Russia isn't physically attacking and invading Ukraine. So because of these different perspectives, we're also seeing increasing support. But the interesting thing is that there is increasing support for Putin, but there's also increasing support for war termination in Russia. So we're simultaneously seeing high support for Putin, but also high support for war termination.
I see. Professor Hwang, same question. His longevity and the high popularity must be subject that international leaders must be quite envious of. What accounts for this Putin phenomenon?
So there are several reasons we can think of for high popularity of Putin. So Putin has been ruling Russia for a long time. So from say 2000, 2008, and to 2012 to right now. So for this period, I mean, compared to 2000, Russia achieved, I think Putin's government achieved strong economy, strong military, and political stability. So it's possible that Russian citizens are, voting for that. Also, as Professor Kim said, there is this strong anti-Western sentiment in Russia. Maybe because of the fall of Soviet Union, maybe because of 2014 sanctions, maybe because of Ukrainian war, whatever it is. I think we can see that there is this strong anti-Western sentiment, and Putin is using this anti-Western sentiment for his political gains. And finally, I think Putin's government is controlling the media. So all this negative information flows against Putin is blocked. So which leads to my last point that this 77% popularity, I mean, does that really represent true preference of Russians? I'm not sure.
You're not sure. Russia is going to have the presidential election next March, and Putin will definitely run for another term. If he wins the election, then he will continue to serve as a president until 2030. Professor Hwang, if he wins the election and remains in the office, what kind of Russia's behavior can we expect?
So, Putin has been ruling Russia for a long time, and if he wins the election, I think his authoritarian system will persist. So therefore, he has already dominated parliament, media, and judiciary, and all these institutions in Russia. So his dictatorial system will be strengthened. And also, he's going to continue his hardline foreign policy if he wins the election. So that's going to affect maybe the termination possibility of Ukrainian war. Also, in return, United States and Western European countries will probably criticize maybe dictatorial system of Putin or hardline foreign policy of Putin. So this new version of Cold War is going to be intensified.
I see. Let's turn our focus from Vladimir Putin as the president of Russia to the bilateral partnership between Russia and North Korea. Professor Kim, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is going to make a visit to Pyongyang in the aftermath of the summit meeting between Putin and Kim. What can we expect from this visit?
In general, we know that there has been a number of exchanges and increasing support on both sides. A recent report has actually shown that Washington found evidence that North Korea is providing weapons to Russia. So conversely, we can imagine that Russia will also be providing some technology assistance to North Korea as well. But at the same time, the relationship and the cooperation between the two countries are relatively shallow. It's more of a marriage of convenience because their national interests do not overlap significantly. And so we won't be able to see, or we won't see a full-scale alliance like the ROK-US alliance. So in that sense, I think there's a little bit less to worry about.
And President Vladimir Putin is going to attend the Belt and Road Forum held in China. Professor Huang, what kind of the result between the President Putin and the President Xi Jinping of China during their meeting over the Belt and Road Forum?
So I think President Xi is going to try to unify voices against the U.S. pressure, thereby strengthening cooperation between Russia and China. Regarding the Ukrainian war, probably President Putin is going to explain what has been going on in this war and try to get some support from China. And I think China is not going to support military equipment and so on, but definitely China could help Russia using economic resources. Also, I think China and Russia have strategic reasons to cooperate each other to deal with these pressures from the United States and Western European countries.
It is very interesting phenomenon that North Korean government is not going to send high-rank government official for the Belt and Road Forum. I think North Korea is very conscious of making the right balance between the two superpowers in China and Russia. With various affairs and factors occurring on the international politics as we cover them, what is the main issue, Professor Kim, you see that we have to pay particular attention to?
As we've been discussing today, we have to watch the situation in the Middle East. We have to see what happens on the Gaza Strip and how Israel proceeds and whether or not Hezbollah decides to join in on the conflict as well. We also want to, as Professor Huang mentioned, keep an eye out for the Third Belt and Road Forum, which is happening this week. And another thing to keep in mind is that the APEC summit will be taking place in November in San Francisco. So we want to see how President Xi Jinping will be cooperating with other leaders there.
Okay, Professor Huang?
So I think we have to understand the world is changing. First of all, these Israel-Palestine conflicts or Ukrainian war, these conflicts, we couldn't imagine if United States, played a leadership role, like in the past. So I think definitely, how the Ukrainian war is going to end, or whether or not this Israel-Palestinian war is going to escalate, will be the points that we have to pay attention to. But other than that, I think we should focus on domestic politics of other countries. So next year, actually, we have several key elections in the United States, in Taiwan, and in Russia as well. So we have to pay attention to these domestic politics, which will affect all these international conflicts.
Professor Huang, Professor Kim, thank you so much for sharing your analysis and insight with us today.
Thank you.
This ends this week's episode of the Roundtable. We'll be back same time next week. Thanks for watching and goodbye.